I want to talk to you about why it is not a good idea to go to Christian marriage conferences or read Christian marriage books if you are in a destructive or toxic marriage. There are many reasons. I'm going to list them. I remembered going to them, and I remember just feeling horrible there, just feeling bad, worse about my marriage. I remember feeling worse about myself, worse about my husband, and it was setting me up for another big fall, another big disappointment. So, why is that? Well, when you're in a toxic or dis destructive marriage, you've only got one person that wants to work on the problems. You've got one person who cares that the marriage is unhealthy, one person who wants to make it better. The other person is usually in denial. The other person is usually the one that has more of the problems than the person who wants to make the changes. And the person who wants the change is trying to get this person to recognize it. And the other person is in denial. So when you're only got one person that really wants to change, you cannot get change in the marriage. You can get change in one person, and you might be able to get minor changes in the marriage where a person makes, some different choices, maybe not to argue as much and things like that. You will get some change, but you will not change the actual structure typically of the marriage, the person who refuses to see their problems. So when you go to these marriage conferences or you read these marriage books, you first of all get a picture that's unreasonable for you when you've got a spouse that isn't healthy or isn't willing to become healthy. You get the picture of the two become one, the of you working together and having a beautiful life and a God-centered home and praying together and having spiritual connection and working together as mother and father with your children and sharing life together and loving and caring mutually for each other and forgiving each other. And that is not what's happening in your home if you have a destructive marriage. The second one is that you leave feeling, as you're sitting there looking at yourself, because you're willing to look at yourself and see what's wrong, you're seeing you imperfectly or seeing yourself and thinking, hey, I make mistakes. I'm not good at that. So you walk out feeling more responsible for the problems than you should be when the other person is not participating or doing most of the damage in the marriage. And yours might be more reactive, like there's something called reactive abuse, which you're reacting to the other person's abuse, the other person's meanness, the other person's narcissism, and you yourself are not abusive. So you walk out feeling more responsible and feeling more guilt for what's going on than you should. So then you leave thinking, okay, it's up to me to double down, triple down, and make change. And that just sets you up again for working super hard, not taking care of yourself, not setting boundaries, and you get some false hope, and the false hope always crashes. And when it crashes, then you're disappointed, you go into despair, you're feeling really, really low and really bad. And it's just this constant cycle of going through that again and again in a destructive marriage or a toxic marriage. You also um, have harmful suggestions that are given to you. Suggestions like to love, to respect, to tolerate, to submit, to have more sex, to endure, to hope, to trust. Um, I'm not sure if I said tolerate and forgive. All of these things are really helpful in a healthy marriage where two people care when they hurt each other. They don't purposefully hurt each other, and they're willing to look at themselves and say they're sorry and take responsibility, and they're willing to grow and change. But in a marriage where you don't have that, when only one person is doing those things, you end up with an even more unbalanced relationship that causes even more harm to you. The next one is that your spouse can use it manipulatively. So if your spouse is sitting there with you there with you at the conference and your spouse, let's say it's your husband, hears that the wife is supposed to have sex and not withhold her body, then you're going to be told, hey, the pastor or the teacher told you you're supposed to have sex. So you're going to feel like, oh boy, now I have to. But it's going to be used in a way that is not loving, that is controlling, that is demanding, that is forcing you to submit or to go along with things without the other side of the relationship being healthy and caring and loving. Or, for instance, you could be thinking, okay, I just need to respect more. And if your spouse tells you, well, telling me what my problems are or pointing out my problems is not respectful or that's not loving, then you might feel like, okay, then since that's not loving and respectful to my spouse, then I can't say anything. So I have to be quiet. So again, what that leads to is more unhealthy tolerating of things that are wrong. Forgiveness can also be used manipulatively. Okay, you've been told to forgive me. And if you don't forgive, then God's not going to forgive you. But when forgiveness is used as a demand without behavior change, without repentance, then that is manipulation. And that will cause you again to tolerate even more. So the other thing is it doesn't give you the principles that you really need. If you are in a destructive or really dysfunctional marriage and or relationship and you are toxic, you need to learn very clear principles of how to take care of yourself. Things like I teach you in my 10 life-saving principles for women in difficult marriages, and the same principles in When Love Hurts, 10 principles to transform difficult relationships, which would be the husband with his wife or with any other person that you're dealing with. And you in there learn what you need as a person in a one-sided, difficult, destructive, dysfunctional marriage where you're the only one that cares if you hurt your spouse. You're the only one that cares about improving and cares about doing what's right and cares about being healthy. You learn how to what proper interpretation of those scriptures mean and how you can apply them in a healthy way. You learn how to change yourself, not your spouse, how to let go of trying to force your spouse to change. You learn how to detach with love, which is to not be affected by everything your spouse does, to not be swayed by their moods and by the anger and all of the accusations and the things that happen, but to focus instead on how you're feeling and what's going on with you. And then the other thing is that you also need that you learn is facing your fears, which is looking at what is bothering you and what you need to face in order to do the right thing. It also nurturing yourself. What is self-care? Is it caring only for my spouse, or is it okay to put myself first sometimes because you have to, or to take care of yourself when your spouse is telling you, no, that's selfish, and that you know that, no, this is healthy. This is what I need to do. And then how do you speak the truth in love to a person who doesn't care what you're saying? Normal communication skills are not going to work when the person you're talking to doesn't want to hear you, doesn't care about what you're feeling, doesn't want to understand what the problems are. You need to learn skills that will help you in that situation. Then how do you set boundaries? How do you figure out what your boundaries are? Are you allowed to set boundaries, or do you have to just tolerate everything? You need to know these things, and you need to know how to protect your children, and you need to know how you can accept things that you don't like, but not things that are wrong, things that are not okay, things that are unhealthy. So there's all of these principles that you need, and you need a lot of tools. And classes like mine teach you those tools in the midst of difficult relationships. Now, my Women Thriving in Difficult Marriages is for women, and Transforming Difficult Relationships is for all difficult relationships, including men in destructive or unhealthy marriages. But also, if you are in just really dysfunctional patterns, it can help you too to take them if you whether you're alone or if you're on working together and learning what you are both doing that's unhealthy and dysfunctional. But you have to do something that identifies the destructive patterns, whether it's a book that you're reading or a course that you're taking on attachment problems, on narcissism, on addiction, whether it's sexual addiction or alcohol, drug addiction. You need skills that equip you to deal with those things. Those are different principles than you're going to learn at the average Christian marriage conference or the average Christian book that you pull off the shelf. And so I'm going to tell you what you do is you set yourself up for this big fall and these unrealistic expectations, and it becomes even further harmful to you. There's so many things that are out now. There's my classes, and there's other programs that are there. There are specific things that you can go take that help you with your attachment. If you both want to go, and you're both open to that. That can pinpoint one of your problems, but you've got to be very careful also what marriage counselors you go to. Does that marriage counselor understand the dynamics you're dealing with? Are they equipped to handle them? When you have abuse, you should not go to marriage counseling together, because the marriage counselor looks at you equally as a couple and is going to kind of assign you each 50-50 problem and talk to you both about what bothers you about the other person, and give your abusive spouse a chance to voice all the complaints about you and attack you and criticize you. And this can be very destructive when the counselor listens and appears to validate your spouse's concerns when they're rooted in an abusive mindset. So hopefully this has been helpful. I'd love to hear your comments. Write them and let me know, or if you've got some questions that you have that are longer and more personal, you're welcome to write me at carla@changemyrelationship.com. And also, please look at my website, look at my courses, look at my books. They are designed for people that are in dysfunctional or toxic relationships, whether that's marriage or any other relationship. So hopefully this helped you. God bless.